An escaped convict is out to kill the judge who sentenced bleh. An escaped convict is out to kill the judge who sentenced him. That's a big word for this time of the night. Hey Coins Agers, we're back for another little Laurel and Hardy review here on the review show. I am your host, Rodney Stewart. We're going to do another Laurel and Hardy review here. We're getting very close to the end of this box set. I have been enjoying the absolute life out of this box set. Absolutely amazing. This one is Do Detectives Think from 1927, and it's the basic story of this is an escaped convict is out to kill the judge who sentenced bleh. An escaped convict is out to kill the judge who sentenced him. That's a big word for this time of the night. Believe it or not, I am shattered. Two inept detectives are hired to guard the judge. Now, the judge is played by the brilliant James Finlayson, and the killer, the Tipton slasher, played by Noah Young, swears revenge at the very beginning of the film. I'm going to escape and I'm going to cut your throat, sort of thing. So we cut from that to there's a lot of people. No, hold on. Finlayson's wife, Viola Richard. There's a lot of uncredited actors in this film. Basically, he's at home and he is reading, his wife's reading the newspaper, and he sees the headline on it: the Tipton slasher escapes. So he panics and he calls for help, and he calls a detective agency, and Jim sorry, the guy that owns it sends Stan and Ollie out. For a change, Stan and Ollie actually have names in this one. Ferdinand Finkelberry is Stan Laurel, the second worst detective in the history of detection, and Oliver is playing Sherlock Pinkham, who is the first worst. So they're sent off to the judge's house to protect them from this killer. While they're on their way, the slasher has found the house, and he's trying to figure out a way of sneaking in to the house, and this guy is walking up the street, and the killer, to reassure himself, is this the judge's house? And the guy is like, yes, I'm the butler, I've just been hired. And he's got his little letter with him, like his references, and the killer jumps him, steals his clothes, and gets into the house posing as the new butler. So there's a few attempts on the judge's life. He's about to slash his throat at one point, and the judge's wife walks in, and he steps away and hides. Well, not so much hides, saying as he's there under false pretenses as the butler. He leaves the room. I'll get him later. Stan and Ollie turn up, introduce themselves as the detectives. You're not going to be bothered by anybody as long as we're here. Throughout this whole film, the slapstick is coming so heavy in this film. If I was to go through all the jokes that happen in this movie, we'd be here for about an hour. That's brilliant. On their way to the house, they have to pass a graveyard, and as they walk past the gate of the graveyard, the wind blows Oliver's hat into the graveyard. He's not going to go in there. He's scared witless. So he sends Stanley in to get the hat. Stanley isn't going to go, but as he walks past the gate, his hat also gets blown in. So eventually Oliver manages to get Stanley into the graveyard, but as he's walking over to get the hats, there's a massive gravestone, like head height. That's a weird gravestone when you think of it. The shape of it is like your average little like 4 foot high shaped gravestone, but it is actually higher than a person. And there's a light shining on the wall behind, and you see the outline of the gravestone. And every time Stanley goes to reach down to get the hats, he looks over at the shadow and he sees the hand coming out. But it's his own hand in the shadow, and he keeps freaking out and he's thinking there's somebody there. We get a bit of slapstick comedy with that. Eventually they get the hats back, and then we go on to one of their most famous routines is the hat mix-up routine. And this is pretty well done in this movie. They go to put their hats on, but of course they've got them mixed up. So Stanley's wearing Ollie's and Ollie's wearing Stan's. So Ollie gets angry, takes Stanley's hat off, hands it to him and asks for his hat back. But Stanley messes it up again and manages to give Oliver back his hat, and then they put on the hats to go on for it again. And of course, that's the hat mix-up. So this happens, 6, 7 times before they eventually get it, and off they go to the house. Anyway, once we get in there, they try and reassure Finlayson that he's got nothing to worry about. And Oliver, at one point, to demonstrate his marksmanship with a gun, gets Stanley to put an apple on his head, and he's going to shoot it off, but misses him by about 7 feet, knocks a statue down, and Finlayson is looking at it. Finlayson and his wife are looking at it and they just don't believe what's happened. Is he this bad a shot? And while they're not looking at Stanley, Oliver gives him the nod and drop the apple off his head. And when they look back, there's no apple there, and Oliver's like, you got a 2-for-1 there. You got a hit and an echo, sort of thing. So the buckshot, got the apple. Yes. Finally, Finlayson and the wife retire for the evening, and the butler / killer takes Stan and Ollie to the spare room for them to spend the night. And while they're getting ready for bed, again, there's a newspaper there, and there's the photograph of the killer and the headline of the escaped prisoner, escaped slasher. And of course, Stan and Ollie's like, where have we seen this guy at before? And he literally just left the room a few seconds beforehand. Finlayson's wife sees the butler / killer with this huge dagger, and he's sneaking around the house trying to find Finlayson, and she screams, and that brings Stan and Ollie to attention. This is the killer, so they have to try and get him. The slapstick moments in this and the remainder of this movie of them trying to actually apprehend the killer are absolutely fantastic. At one point, he comes across this huge, massive, great sword hanging in the wall in the house, and he throws away his dagger and takes it, and he's chasing Stan and Ollie around the house, and he's swinging this thing. At one point, Stanley runs out a door just as he swings it, and the next thing he runs back and headless. But we discover that he hasn't actually had his head chopped off. Like, I thought it was hilarious that Stan and Ollie are both running around the house, and then at one point Stanley's running around with no head. But it turns out that he's that scared his head disappeared inside his coat. But it's so well done. There's one part in this film where I laughed so hard, and it was a part where Finlayson has discovered that the killer is in his house, and he's in the bath at this point, and he gets out of the bath, goes to the bathroom door, looks through the keyhole, sees the killer with the dagger out in the other room. So he ducks back into the bath and tries to hide below the water, but he accidentally knocks the plug of the bath out, and the water starts to drain. But the water doesn't gradually drain, it just gone. This is a silent short, and it was just so funny the way that it happened, because Finlayson was dead still whenever they drained the water out of this bath. Now, the water draining out would take quite a bit of time in real time, but this was like a split second and gone, and he was just motionless the whole time. Brilliant. Yes, by the end of the film, Stanley manages to apprehend the killer only after Finlayson gets shot in the butt by his wife, falls down the stairs, covered, he's wearing a bathrobe, well, a sheet at this point. And when he falls to the bottom of the stairs, he ends up falling backwards into like a weird voodoo Halloween mask sort of a thing. And that's on the back of his head. So when he stands up with his back towards the sitting room where the killer's at, the killer sees this sheet, and the sheet is shaking, but it's Finlayson in below it, and he's just that scared that he's vibrating. And this crazy demon-like face, and the killer freaks out and, get me out of here sort of a thing. So Stanley takes his opportunity and puts his hand into his jacket pocket and pretends that he has a gun in his pocket, and he gets the killer to go towards the front door of the house and puts him into a closet and locks the door. But Oliver is hiding in this closet, and he's stuck in there with the killer while the police turn up. And when Stanley points to the door and they unlock it and open it up, Oliver falls out with 2 black eyes. And the police lift both him and the killer up and drag them out of the house. So Stanley is the hero of the day at this point. He's like, you know what, it was just one of my 3-minute jobs. You're more than welcome. And as he goes to leave, walks out the front door, he meets Oliver out there. And next thing, Stanley gets knocked in through the door into the sitting room. He's got 2 black eyes as well that he's got from Oliver. So at the end of the movie, the 2 of them get up, put their hats on, again mixed up, but instead of going into the mixed up hat routine, they just leave, and that's the end of the film. This was a genuine joy to watch this movie, and again, this is not a spoiler. I have kind of given you the blueprint of what happens in the movie, but the slapstick moments in this come thick and fast. This is about a 20-minute short silent, and it's just pretty much as soon as the jokes start, like the only part where there's no jokes in this movie is the setup at the very beginning, where Finlayson as the judge is passing sentence on this prisoner and sending him off. But from there on in, as soon as the slapstick moments start, they're thick and fast right up until the end of the movie. Absolutely brilliant. I would definitely recommend checking this one out. Don't skip over it just because it's a silent. I tended to do that for a long time as a kid, but I'm just getting so much more appreciation for these guys as I get older. They're absolute legends.